It's a good game. That's the review. No, but in case you couldn't tell by the title, this is going to be a review of Persona 5 in comparison of Persona 3 and 4. Not so much looking at what makes Persona 5 a good game on its own, but rather comparing the good and less good points about it to the earlier games in the series and seeing how it stacks up, because there's plenty of just reviews of Persona 5, but I personally haven't seen anything that just goes in depth in comparing it to Persona 3 and 4. And in the video, if I, just refer to the Persona series or whatever, know that I'm only referring to Personas 3 and 4 and not 2 or 1, because there's a big divide, and 2 and 1 are just SMT games, and 3 is super different, and 4 and 5 have pretty much just iterated on 3. So yeah, in case we got any little bitches watching this video. But to get on to it, I'm going to be going from the least good to the most good things comparatively. And the least good, pains me to say it, is the music. The soundtrack obviously is great on its own, comparatively speaking to video games as a whole, but compared to Persona soundtracks, I mean, we're talking about legendary shit here, you know what I'm saying? And Persona 5 just doesn't quite stack up. It's a little bit of a letdown. There's, it kind of is trying to go for this jazzy, smooth, kind of demure aesthetic sonically, but it just doesn't leave many of the tracks being super memorable. And the ones that are memorable are only that because, they play 50 million times because it's the song that plays every night. And you go in your house because you start out in your house at night and you go to bed and it's the song that plays, and it's kind of repetitive. What I'm saying is that there's a slight lack of tracks. I feel like they could have added a few more in to try to mix it up a little bit. Like maybe another battle theme. Like that was one of the best things of Persona 4 Golden, is that there were multiple battle themes. But whatever. It's fine. Then we got the story, I guess. Now the story in Persona games has never been great all the way through. I would say 3 had the best one. I don't think that's a controversial opinion. And I would say 5's is worse than 3's. Although I would say it's also slightly better than 4's. But, like the other games, it's strongest in the beginning and at the end. And definitely the weakest in the middle. Because at the beginning, you're like, oh, well, what's going on? What's all this? And the game's explaining it to you. And then at the end, they ramp up the stakes and all that shit. And it just, gets big. I do think that Persona 5 is interesting. Like, Persona 4 gets interesting as soon as you fight, like, Adachi. Or even before that. Like, Persona 4 has kind of spikes of interest. Like, when you fight fucking Kubo and then Adachi and stuff like that. But Persona 5, it's like the very, very end that it gets interesting. And not really before that. Even when you're fighting kind of what you would assume is the big bad. Because there's going to be a bigger bad than the big bad. But even when you're fighting the big bad, it's not really that interesting. It's a lot less interesting than fighting like Adachi. But yeah. The story does amp up very nicely, I think. And I'm pretty sure I got the Chew ending, so I think I experienced all the story. So yeah, it's alright. But like I said, yeah, the middle is definitely the weakest bit. You're fighting the bad guys, and it's like, well, what do these guys have to do with anything, really? Like, Kaneshiro he's like a Yakuza guy you fight about halfway through. It's like, what did he do to anyone that you know? Like, Sure, he's a Yakuza guy, he's extorting people, but there's not really much of a narrative stake in beating him. Like, he's just a bad guy, like a generic bad guy. It's like, okay. Like, Kamoshida, he's the first guy you fight, and he's the most interesting one, I think. So, it's just, kind of a weak point, but story has never been the Persona game's strong point anyway. Then I would say characters. The characters in Persona 5 are about on par with Persona 4's, I would say. And definitely better than Persona 3's. The main cast, in comparison to 4, is weaker, but I think all of the non, you know, main team social links in Persona 5 are better than in Persona 4 as a whole. So it all kind of evens out, I would say. I'm gonna just go over, the whole crew and compare them to Persona 4's, because Persona 4 obviously had the better cast than Persona 3. So first, not counting yourself, obviously, you got Ryuji, and he's the Yosuke, he's the Junpei, he's the comic relief best friend, who, funnily enough, isn't the magician. He's the chariot, actually. And basically he is kind of like Yosuke mixed with a little bit of kanji, because he gets really mad a lot. Like, he just goes, I'm so pissed. He like punches shit all the time. He gets mad a lot. And his social link is okay. It's mostly just him being kind of sad about something that happened like the last year. Like, if you do Ryuji's social link not at like the very beginning of the game, it seems a lot weirder, because he talks a lot about Kamoshida and stuff, which is stuff that happens at the very beginning of the game. So it's okay. It's just a lot of moping around about stuff that already happened and just trying to do track team stuff, which is kind of gay. Ryuji as a character himself, though, outside of his social link, is pretty fun. He can be a little bit annoying sometimes, especially kind of like in the last third of the game, or fourth of the game. He kind of causes like this really gay thing to happen in the plot at around like Haru's dad's dungeon. That was really annoying just to look at, but other than that, he's pretty alright. Then we have Morgana, who is the Teddy of, the mascot character of this game. Quite a bit worse than Teddy, I would say. Morgana's kind of a shit. Like, by the end of the game, they do endear you to him. And yes, Morgana is a him. I was kind of surprised to learn that, considering his name is Morgana, and he's voiced by a girl. But it's a guy. What can I say? But yeah. Morgana's kind of like all the stuff I don't like about Teddy. Like the fucking, oh, but I gotta go. Like the weird obligation stuff that you tell Teddy over and over. It's like, dude, you can stay. We all like you. And he's like, oh, but I gotta go. Baby. It's like all that stuff with Morgana, but without any of the charming things of Teddy. Morgana's just kind of like somewhat of a dick. Like, she's kind of authoritative and not very funny or anything. But by the end of the game, I mean, they kind of they get you a little bit with, like in Morgana and stuff. So I can't hate too much, but definitely worse than Teddy. On is, well, she's the lovers, so I guess she's compared to Rise, although, I mean, they're not incredibly similar characters. On Social Link is kind of not that good. It's mostly just her being like, oh, my friend. Ans also is a lot less good if you do it not immediately at the beginning of the game, because it also is very obsessed with something that happens at the very beginning. And if you do it later, you probably are liable to forget that it ever happened at all. Um, yeah, her social link is kind of boring. On herself, like outside of it, is pretty fun. You know, she's similar to Reese saying that she's bubbly and fun and kind of flirty. It's kind of surprising actually when you go to the beach, because of course you fucking go to the beach. And she like gets the big swimsuit reveal, and Ryuji is kind of like gawking at her, and she instead of being like, "What are you doing?" like like they do in Persona 4, she actually like laughs and then is like, "Oh, do you like me now, Ryuji?" Eh? So it's a bit of fun. She's a fun character. I like her, even if her social link isn't the best. Then we got Yusuke. I don't think he has really a direct counterpart in either game, but he's a cool guy, I guess. He's kind of like he's both like the cool, calm-headed one, but also like somewhat of a goofball at times. So he's boring when he's the level-headed one, and he's pretty funny when he's eccentric and goofy. I didn't get to finish a social link, so maybe it gets somewhere crazy, but from what I did of it, which was, I think, like 6 or 7, it's kind of just whatever. Not really too much interesting. But it wasn't horrible. So Yusuke is alright. Then we got Makoto, who, she's probably my waifu for the game. And that's due in no small part to her design, admittedly. Because her design is really nice. But her social link is probably the second best one out of the main cast. It's just like hanging out with her, helping her kind of learn what she wants to do with the future, because a big thing that happens in like the story is she rebels against being like the honor student council president and stuff. So her social link is kind of working through that, and then also you are having to like help her friend that she met like in the social link realize that her boyfriend is trying to exploit her and turn her into like a prostitute. So that was pretty interesting. And yeah, her personality, she's kind of I guess she's like the Mitsuru of the group. She's kind of the one in charge. She is like the oldest. But she's a lot of fun. I like her. Then there's Futaba. And Futaba, I would definitely say, has the best social link out of the main cast. Because Futaba's whole deal is that she has social anxiety. So her social link is just working through that. Kind of helping her get better and better as she goes along. You do you see progress. It's really fulfilling. There's a lot of there's a lot of memes. Futaba is a gamer XD type of gal. They say Keck in there one time, so it's a good route 10 out of 10. It's a good social link. But yeah, it is a lot of fun. Futaba's a really good character. She's pretty charming with all her memes. Yeah, and I like her knee-high socks. Then we got Haru, I guess. Haru's the last one? Yeah, I think so. Didn't get to hang out with Haru much. Her social link requires the max rank of proficiency, like to even get to rank 2. So I didn't get that, so I didn't get to hang out with Haru. In the scripted stuff, like the plot stuff, she seemed alright. So, what gonna do? Yeah. And I'm not gonna go over all of the, like, fucking extra people, the out of the Phantom Thieves social links. But a few of the highlights, I would definitely say are Toranosuke, his social link, where it's a old, super unpopular politician. You got to help him like regain his confidence, and you got to do like political scandal stuff. That's really fun. Fucking Kawakami, her social link, your homeroom teacher, who is kind of like a bitch at the beginning of the actual story, but you realize that it's all because something happened deep down. That's a lot of fun. And also fucking, I don't know, like Oyas, who when I first saw her, I'm like, did they put Yukiko in the game? Because she looks like Yukiko and she has Yukiko's voice actress. Um, but no, they're different. She's like a fun, it's like an investigative journalist who has a dark secret, kind of. And just talking about also the fucking the non-Phantom Thief social links. I think one of the coolest things about a lot of them is that, um, I guess to kind of talk about a gameplay thing, you go to Mementos, which is the name of the Tartarus-like thing in this game, where it's just this big, very long, randomly generated kind of dungeon. Um, a lot of the characters that aren't in the Phantom Thieves, when you get their social link to a certain rank, they'll ask, they'll be like, "Oh man, I wish this one person who's fucking with me would just stop." And then you have to go into Mementos and change their heart to stop fucking with them. And that's really fun, I think. Adds a lot of, I don't know quite what it adds to social links. Maybe somewhat of legitimacy. Because my biggest problem with social links is that you don't really feel them in the main game enough. But maybe that does kind of help with that. And I love the fact that at the end of all the social links, except for like Sojiro's, you do get, like, they figure out that you're in the Phantom Thieves. I think that's really cool. That happens for all of them. I like that a lot. But yeah, I would, again, to reiterate, say that the non-Phantom Thieves social links, or confidants, I hate the fact they changed the name from social links to confidants. It's really stupid. But the non-Phantom Thief ones, I think, are way better than Persona 4's non-investigation team ones. And then the bestest, no, I guess second bestest things are the graphics, I guess, even though, I mean, the graphics are a huge leap above 3 and 4, obviously. You're skipping a whole console generation here. The models are great. I think Persona team really put in work on Catherine, getting their facial models up to snuff. You can definitely see a lot of Vincent in the main character's walk cycle, at least. Got their hands in their pockets and stuff, and kind of hunched over. But the models are great. The character designs, pretty much all around, are great. I was glad they kind of decided to go a little bit more goofy for some of the character designs in this game, comparatively. Because Persona 4, everybody pretty much looks regular. Except for maybe, like, I don't know, the old lady. But there's not any, like, weird things. But in Persona 5, you have, like, Principal Kobayakawa, who looks like a fucking Ghibli villain. It's really funny. He's like a blob man. I like that a lot. And yeah, all the rest of the character designs are slick and cool and nice. Just good. And the cutscenes, what's cool is, there's animated cutscenes, obviously, and there's a lot more of them in Persona 5 than 3 or 4. But also there are, like, in-engine cutscenes, which are also really, really nice. Even just the regular kind of, like, dialogue, talking back and forth, speech bubble stuff is a lot more active than Persona 3 and Persona 4's, which is to say more than not at all. But it does add a lot, when they do, like, unique animations in the middle of those kinds of things. Or there's little bits of like a character will cough before they talk, before they have a speech bubble, stuff like that makes the conversations feel a lot more fucking active, I guess, more dynamic. So yeah, I mean that's not technically graphic stuff, but whatever. And the biggest improvement of the whole thing is the combat and just the gameplay, I guess itself. I would say. The one of the biggest changes is you can switch party members on the fly. You just go to your menu, just press the pause button. You go to stats, and you can switch your party members right there. You don't got to go back to the beginning of the dungeon. You don't got to do nothing. Also, another big one, party members receive stats even if they're not fighting. It's like a Persona, it's like a Pokemon X and Y and Sun and Moon type of like XP share type of thing. Makes it a lot easier to just have your whole party is relatively the same level. Obviously, the people that are fighting get more XP, but you don't have to be grinding with a whole bunch of different characters in order to keep everybody roughly the same level, like you did in all the other games. Like in Persona 4, I would always find myself just using the same characters the entire game because I didn't want to have to bother grinding other people up. And I would just, make up for the elemental weaknesses or whatever that I was lacking on the other people in my team. But, yeah, in Persona 5, you don't really have to worry about that nearly as much because you can just, everybody gets XP and everybody's... you do have to keep up with, like, buying equipment and stuff for them, which can get a little spendy, but it's not nearly as bad as it was. I forgot to mention this in the social links thing, so maybe I should have mentioned it there, but social links do a lot more stuff than they did in Persona 3 and 4, because in addition to the big, XP thing you get when fusing personas, you also get other, like, in-game bonuses. Like Hifumi, who's, like, a social link in the game. Doing stuff with her makes you do different, like, tactical stuff. Like, I think when you get up to, like, level 1 or 2 with her, you get the ability to switch party members out in the middle of a battle, which, like, is really essential and really useful later on, obviously. And then other stuff, like, later on, if you're surrounded by an enemy, like if they've, hit you when you're on the overworld or whatever, then you can leave, instantly the minute you press the button. So stuff like that. Torinosuke, he helps you with speech stuff. Things of that nature. The social links are much more useful to your average everyday gameplay and not just for your Persona fusion. So that's really interesting as well. And what do Torinosuke's speech things do? Well, what are they good for? Well, they got rid of the friggin' like the little follow the card game that they did in Persona 4, and also the weird matching thing they did in Persona 4 Golden. They did the good old SMT demon negotiation, which I'm sure you probably knew if you looked up anything about the game. You just fucking knock them down with the hit their weakness or get a crit. Yeah, you gotta chew the fat and talk it out with them like regular SMT stuff. And like Torinosuke's for that, it makes it so that you have chances to do it again if you fuck up the speech option, or even one of the best abilities is you can, I think if it's like rank 9 or 10, you can actually just you can convince shadows of higher levels than you to just join your team, and that's super crazy. But yeah, the shadow negotiation really adds a lot of personality to the different personas that they didn't really have before. So yeah, and it's fun. I think I like the the follow the card thing more, just because I'm good at it, and you can basically just get whatever persona you want every time. But still, it's less engaging, I guess. Persona 5 has a good mix, because people were like, boy, the dungeons of Persona 4 are kind of shitty, because it's just these randomly generated blah. And Persona 5 or Persona 3 didn't really have dungeons, they just had Tartarus for the most part. And Persona 5 does a good job of, fulfilling the I want a big randomly generated thing to just grind in, and also the I kind of want a well-designed dungeon thing by having mementos, which, like I mentioned before, it's kind of like Tartarus, where you can grind in and is randomly generated and is big, and you have the dungeons or the palaces or whatever. They're the main things you're going to be going into. So that's good. Not really too much changes to like the base gameplay. It's still the SMT persona, hit the weakness, knock them down, do an all-out attack. With the addition of, like I said, the conversations. There are different elements. Like, I didn't see, when I bought SMT4, I didn't see, like, there was nuclear and psychic stuff, so I don't know if that's brand new to Persona 5, or if that's an older SMT stuff, but there are nuclear and psychic elements as well, in addition to the regular ones. There's gun damage, which is kind of harkens back to like the different types of physical damage in Persona 3. There was like blunt and fucking stab damage and stuff. And now there's just physical and gun damage as separate entities. And yeah, I mean the dungeons, the designed dungeons are a lot of fun. There's like puzzles and stuff, which is like, whoa, puzzles in a Persona game? What are you talking about, Joe? What are you talking about, Mac? Like, the closest Persona 4 came to puzzles was that one room in Yukiko's dungeon where, like, oh, you go back to where you were before if you to do it wrong. And that's about it. But yeah, in Persona 5, there are, like, full-fledged, like, puzzles and stuff that are a little tricky, honestly, although I'm pretty bad at puzzles, so probably not very tricky for smart people. But whatever. And then just, like, little miscellaneous stuff that I have, either in favor or against. One of the ones I have against Persona 5, there doesn't really seem to be nearly as much stuff to do, like, as a couple with, the social link girls you meet, as there were in, like, Persona 4 especially. Because in Persona 4 you got Summer Festival and Christmas and New Year's and Valentine's Day, while in Persona 5 you just have Christmas and Valentine's Day. Christmas is also kind of short and ends on like a sour note because of plot stuff. But regardless, it's not nearly as satisfying as the Persona 4 Christmas scenes. So yeah, it feels more like with the couples that you're just like, we'll finish their social link, then we're done, whatever. So that's kind of disappointing. Oh, and there's one other scene other than Christmas and Valentine's Day in Persona 5, but it's just one other one, and it's only with like your main team social links, so that's kind of disappointing as well if you have a out of the Phantom Thieves wife, which you probably should if you got taste. But yeah, it's that's just like a minor thing. Yeah, that's about it, I think. I was gonna have like a whole other section at the end there, but I could only think of one thing I really wanted to talk about. But yeah, I would say that all in all, it's better than Persona 4, if only just because of the improvements and the streamlining and stuff of the combat. Oh, I guess another thing that probably is pretty major. You don't have to, like, you're able to save in safe rooms and you're able to like travel freely from safe rooms to like the beginning of the dungeon where the velvet room is and stuff. As opposed to like the Persona 4 system where it's like, oh, if you want to save, you better be stocked up on go homes, or else you're fucked. And if you're spending a bunch of time in a dungeon grinding, and oops, you die, well then you better do it again, Joe, buddy. Which did happen to me once in Persona 5 as well, but it's a lot less likely to happen because it also like kind of auto saves when you go into a safe room. So that's it's really nice as well. But yeah, it's better than Persona 4, I'd say, and definitely better than Persona 3 because it actually lets you control your party members. So yeah, good game out of 10.